Hello, everyone. Today, I want to talk about a truly fascinating historical figure. Imagine this scene. It is the late 19th century. We are in the middle of the American Gilded Age. Powerful men like J.P. Morgan, John D. Rockefeller, and Andrew Carnegie dominate the world. But right in the middle of Wall Street walks a woman. She wears a faded, dirty black dress. She carries a cheap satchel filled with financial papers. People laugh at her. They mock her behind her back. They call her the Witch of Wall Street. But she does not care. Why? Because she is richer than almost all of them. Her name is Hetty Green. When she died in 1916, she had a liquid fortune worth over $100 million. In today's money, that is well over $2 billion. She was the richest woman in America. But her story is not just a simple tale of wealth. It is a deep story of obsession, family betrayal, unbelievable thrift, and pure financial genius. I have analysed her life in great depth using historical resources. Let me break down exactly how she built her empire. I will show you why her legacy is so complicated. Let's start at the beginning. Hetty was born in 1834 in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Her family was incredibly wealthy. The Howlands and Robinsons made their vast fortune in the whaling industry and the lucrative China trade. But Hetty did not experience a normal, playful childhood. Her mother Abby was constantly ill and stayed in bed. Hetty's only brother died as an infant. Because of this, little Hetty spent her days with her father, Edward Mott Robinson, and her grandfather, Gideon Howland. Both powerful men suffered from failing eyesight, so, starting at just 6 years old, Hetty became their eyes. She read the daily financial papers aloud to them. She read complex stock quotations and global commerce reports. Think about that for a moment. While other little girls played with dolls, Hetty was learning the deep mechanics of global trade. By age 13, she became the official family bookkeeper. Her father taught her a very harsh but important lesson. He told her that the property is a trust. You never spend it on luxury. You must enlarge it for future generations. Hetty absorbed this lesson completely. She adopted the strict Quaker values of her family. She hated conspicuous consumption. She learned to love the pure math of money. But a massive turning point happened in 1865. Hetty's father died. He left an estate worth about $6 million. However, he did not trust a woman to manage this capital. He put most of the money into a restrictive trust. Hetty received only the income. She felt furious and betrayed. She knew she was a much better investor than the men managing her money. Shortly after, her beloved Aunt Sylvia died. Sylvia left an estate of $2 million. Again, much of it went to public charity or into trusts. Hetty finally snapped. She produced an earlier will from 1862. This document supposedly left everything directly to Hetty and invalidated all future wills. The executor of the estate, Thomas Mandel, called it total forgery. The dispute went to court. It became one of the most famous trials in American history. Robinson versus Mandel. The defense brought in Benjamin Pierce. He was a famous Harvard mathematician. Pierce used statistical analysis against Hetty. He proved that the signatures on the documents matched too perfectly. The odds of this exact match happening naturally were 1 in 2.6 sextillion. Pierce argued the signature was obviously traced. The court ruled against Hetty. Her public reputation was ruined. People called her a common criminal. But Hetty settled for $600,000 and moved on. She learned a bitter, cold lesson. She could only rely on herself. In 1867, Hetty married Edward Henry Green. He was a wealthy businessman from Vermont. But Hetty was nobody's fool. She forced Edward to sign a strict prenuptial agreement. This was almost unheard of for a woman in the 1860s. Their personal finances were kept completely separate. To escape the bad press of the forgery trial, the couple moved to London, here. Hetty proved her absolute financial genius. During the American Civil War, the US government issued paper money. People called these notes greenbacks. Their value plummeted because the public feared the government would default. Investors panicked and sold them cheaply. But Hetty was a fierce contrarian. She analysed the fundamental economic strength of America. She knew the country would inevitably recover. So, she bought these greenbacks at massive discounts. When the government finally backed them with gold, Hetty made an absolute fortune. In 1 year alone in London, she made $1.25 million from her bond investments. Her strategy was incredibly simple, but brilliant. As she later explained, I buy when things are low and nobody wants them. I keep them until they go up and people are crazy to get them. This is classic value investing. She was doing this decades before famous investors like Warren Buffett or Benjamin Graham were even born. Eventually, the Greens returned to America, but deep trouble soon brewed in the marriage. Hetty's husband Edward was a reckless speculator. He loved high risk. He borrowed heavily on margin. Hetty hated debt with a passion. She never speculated. In 1885, Edward's primary bank, Cisco & Son, suddenly collapsed. Edward was deeply in debt. The bank actually tried to hold Hetty's $26 million in assets to cover its massive losses. Hetty was outraged. She paid his debts, took her money, and transferred everything to Chemical Bank. She effectively banished her husband from her financial life. She never truly forgave him. From then on, she managed her vast empire entirely alone. She set up a free desk at Chemical Bank to avoid paying rent for a private office. She quickly became the undisputed Queen of Wall Street. She bought undervalued railroads. She bought prime real estate in Chicago. She bought safe government bonds. She did her own rigorous, independent research. She never trusted market rumours. She built massive cash reserves to protect herself. But her massive success came with a very dark shadow. The press absolutely hated her. They focused entirely on her cheapness. They cruelly called her the Witch of Wall Street. The stories about her are legendary. To avoid paying property taxes, she lived like a homeless nomad. She moved constantly between cheap boarding houses in Hoboken and Brooklyn. She wore the same black dress until it practically rotted off her body. She supposedly told her laundress to wash only the dirty bottom hem, to save money on soap. She once spent half a night searching her carriage for a lost 2-cent stamp. But the most horrific story involves her own son, Ned. When Ned was a young boy, he injured his leg in a sledding accident. Hetty supposedly dressed them both as beggars. She wanted to get free medical treatment at a local charity clinic. When the doctors recognised her famous face, she refused to pay their fee. She took Ned home and tried to treat him herself. Years later, the leg turned gangrenous. It had to be completely amputated. People rightfully called her a monster. Was she really? Modern biographers now debate this heavily. Some say she actually spent days looking for a good specialist who would not overcharge her. But her extreme frugality definitely caused immense, unnecessary suffering. However, from a purely analytical standpoint, her thrift was her ultimate weapon, because she spent absolutely nothing on herself. Every single dollar she earned compounded. She understood the mathematical time value of money, better than anyone alive. Hetty was not afraid of anyone. She routinely fought the most powerful men in America. Take Collis Huntington, for example. He was a ruthless railroad magnate. He tried to bully Hetty in a business dispute. He even threatened her son Ned. Hetty did not flinch. She pointed to a pistol on her desk and told Huntington, "Harm one hair on Ned's head, and I'll put a bullet through your heart." She commanded absolute respect. Hetty's greatest triumph undoubtedly came during the famous Panic of 1907. The American stock market crashed. Hard. Banks failed everywhere. Wall Street was bleeding cash. But Hetty, was perfectly ready. She had predicted the financial crash years in advance. She had smartly converted her assets into massive, liquid cash reserves. While proud, arrogant men went bankrupt, Hetty held all the cash. Desperate businessmen, and even the city of New York, came begging to her for emergency loans. She wrote a massive check for $1.1 million to keep the city government afloat. When JP Morgan called an urgent, secret emergency meeting of top bankers to save the US economy, Hetty Green was the only woman invited. She sat in that library and dictated her terms. She proved unequivocally that a woman could dominate the cutthroat, male-dominated world of finance. Hetty Green finally died in 1916. At the age of 81, she left behind a staggering, unbelievable fortune of up to $200 million. She split it between her two children, Ned and Sylvia. Ironically, her son Ned spent his money on luxury cars, yachts and mansions. He lived exactly the way she hated. When her children died, the massive fortune was scattered to charities and distant relatives. Hetty Green was a true pioneer of modern value investing. She broke the thick glass ceiling on Wall Street decades before women could even vote. Yes, she was paranoid. Yes, she was painfully cheap. She was deeply flawed as a mother and as a person, but she was also an absolute undeniable financial genius. Her core rules were beautifully simple. Use plain common sense, avoid terrible debt, buy cheap, sell dear, and stay persistent. She did not let society dictate how she should live. She lived by her own rules. She watched her pennies and the millions took care of themselves. Thank you for listening to this deep dive into the life of the Witch of Wall Street. It is a story of extreme contrasts, brilliant strategy, and human tragedy. Let me know your thoughts on Hetty Green in the comments below. Would you live like a pauper to die a billionaire? Hit the like button and subscribe for more amazing historical financial analysis